This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
Hi, I'm Rekha Sharma, and I played Landry on Star Trek Discovery. You are listening to The Edge on Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Welcome, listeners, to another episode of The Edge, Trek FM's dedicated podcast to Star Trek Discovery. I'm your host, Patrick Devlin, and join with me... Actually, Amy's on a top-secret mission this week. She is doing some recon for Section 31 on the crew of the Discovery. So in her place, we have a very special guest for you, and let's bring them in now. How are you, Hayley?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on. How are you?
I'm doing great. Glad to be talking about Discovery, and we've podcasted one other time, and so it's cool to get a second go at this.
Yeah, this is exciting. Yeah, I think I was on with you and Amy at one point, but I don't.
Yes.
Too many podcasts ago that I don't remember.
Yeah, it was early season, I think. I don't remember which one, but I do remember we did podcasts. That's about all I remember.
Yeah.
So we get a second try, which is cool, and and listeners get a new voice. So
yeah,
they'd rather mine be the one gone, but it is what it is.
I hope not.
But anyway, before we get into it, I just wanted to talk. I don't know if CBS has the same commercials everywhere in the country, or I don't even know what commercials they get outside of that. But so I was watching this episode, and so we know this episode or this series is going on about AI taking over and destroying the universe, right? And my first commercial break, they talk about Microsoft AI making better beer. Like someone really dropped the ball on this one.
I had that same commercial, so that was I was like, I'm a little afraid of the AI, actually.
Yeah, right. This is not the show to be promoting AI. But, so I just thought that was funny, because if I was going to take over the world, I'd probably start with something people like a lot, like beer.
Yeah.
So it was just weird. I just wanted to bring it up before we got into, like, the actual episode, because I just thought it was funny. So anyway, we are here to talk about the episode The Red Angel. And what were your initial thoughts on this episode?
Holy buckets. So I was totally a latecomer. I actually watched it this morning. And it was incredibly powerful. There was some stuff that wasn't great for me, but then there was stuff that I really was handled really well, I think. The scene with Culber and Cornwell, I absolutely loved. And there was just some other little things. Tilly being shushed by Giorgio was great. So overall, I enjoyed it. It's still not probably super high on my list of my favorite episodes so far this season, but I enjoyed it.
I would probably categorize my viewing of this the same way. Like, the way it moves the story forward was great.
Yes.
Where the story is going is great. The way, the execution at times throughout this episode felt a little weird. I did love almost every character, 2 character moments. There's one there that's actually 4 characters in a scene. But, like, every time we got a moment to delve a little deeper into one of these characters' emotions, I loved all those moments. The Culber, Giorgio, Stamets and Tilly scene was great. Michael and Spock was great both times. Michael and Tyler was great. Those I thought were all very well done. There was just some of the little facts they put in here weren't the greatest, but overall, I think the episode did what it was supposed to do, and I think that at the end we got to where we all, as viewers, wanted to be. So that's a big plus for me.
Yeah.
Starting off, just talking about the funeral scene. So I was very adamant. I didn't even care that she died last week, but whatever. We still had the scene, which was kind of cool because we ended up having a scene that's similar to Spock's scene from the movies when Spock dies. And I thought that was interesting the way they did it. And I thought it was weird when they showed you the top of the coffin. You know, they show you the insignia, but it says autopilot on either side of the insignia first, and then that kind of fades away to just show you the coffin itself. You didn't catch that?
I didn't catch that. So
it shows it for a second.
And maybe it's just something that was reflected onto it. Or it's, you know, the programming in the capsule itself. I mean,
yeah, I think that's what I was wondering was it that the capsule was going to be on autopilot, which makes sense, right? Because they push it off into space and then it goes wherever it goes. Or were they trying to tell us that everyone was there so that no one was piloting the ship at the moment?
I would say the latter. I think it would probably be something of there has to be some sort of system to kind of pilot this wherever. I mean, they were near a planet. I don't know if the coffin went down to the planet. I mean, I imagine it would. Otherwise, you're going to come across a lot of floating coffins in space because a lot of people die in space. And we're not the sarcophagus ship and we don't like reattach them to the ship. So I would imagine that there's some sort of autopilot system to onboard the capsule to get her down to the planet. Not that no one was piloting the ship.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. It was a little odd the way, because it was doing like the cut scenes back and forth. So I just wondered what your take was on it. I mean, I think you're right, but I just wasn't sure. What'd you think of the speeches that were given for the funeral?
That opening scene was really beautiful and really powerful. I appreciated the little things that were said. I thought it was kind of odd because there were so many and the space was so vast that really the only people who are going to hear you are the people nearest you. But I liked that they included everyone who knew her rather than Pike just giving a speech, because he hasn't been on board long enough really to have known Airiam long enough. So I thought that was well done in that sense, because normally it's the captain that says something. And it wouldn't make sense for Pike to say something about her because he didn't know her as long.
Right, because these were much more personal than someone just died under my command. Like, So I enjoyed the speeches. Like, Tilly talks about how people don't live life like every moment is a miracle, but because of what Airiam had gone through, she did. I like that speech. I like Michael talks about how a crew becomes friends and family, not just a colleague. And she said a few other things in there that I really enjoyed out of her speech, but that was the biggest, you know. And then Saru at the end with the song, that really reminded me of like a Catholic funeral. I mean, which I found interesting because, you know, this is one of the first series. Well, not Deep Space Nine did it too, but it's kind of embracing religion, and then we have this kind of religion aspect to this funeral. We also see a very patriotic part of the funeral too, because full disclosure, 2 weeks ago my wife's grandfather passed away, and he was a member of the United States Army, and so when he passed away, you know, they do the whole flag folding where they fold it in half, and then fold it 13 times. And they pulled off that scene for Airiam perfect because while the flag is draped over the coffin in a different direction, it's not long ways, it's across it widthwise. When they pull it up, they snap it up, which is a big part of the flag ceremony, you know, when you bury a soldier or a veteran. And they didn't show the rest of that, but you could tell that that's what they were going for. And I didn't like someone dying. I enjoyed that they added that into the scene because it gives more realism to someone like me, anyway, who's been to a few former soldiers' funerals at this point in my life.
Yeah, that was really, like I said, the whole scene with the funeral was really well done. And I have not been, but my ex was in the military, so I understand military funerals and I understand how they're done. And so that was really, I think, really neat that they did that. And I kind of want the follow-up of like, who got the flag? Like, who was it given to? But yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that's a huge part of that. You know, like, so for instance, at my wife's grandfather's funeral, they gave it to her uncle. her mom and her uncle decided the uncle would get that. There's things different people get from someone who passed away or whatever, but the flag was going to her uncle, and the servicewoman who presented the flag walked up and gave it to her, and there's actually a speech that goes along with it. It's not just, here's your flag, have a good day, and it talks about this is from the President of the United States, so on and so forth for your service. It's longer. I don't know it. I was never part of the honor guard, but it's very important, the speech itself, the actual speech. And then when leaving, that servicewoman was not allowed to leave and not allowed to put her arm down until my wife's Uncle Joe, who was holding the flag, was out of sight and gone. Because she salutes that flag until the end. And so I think it would be interesting to find out who ended up getting. I mean, from what we've seen, we don't know any of her family members that are still surviving because her husband passed away, but we don't know about who she was talking to in that message. But if it was someone on the ship, I'd probably pick Tilly for the way they portrayed that relationship over the last 2 episodes, because it's clear that they wanted us to believe, at least, that her and Tilly were the closest of all her other friends.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that it would have been Tilly that would have gotten it. I mean, they did focus on her after the folding, right? So they did,
yes.
The camera was on Tilly, so perhaps it was.
Yeah, it would make sense to me, especially since, like, when Airiam was nervous this episode before, she asked Tilly to stand next to her and not move, not leave, so it would make sense to me. But another thing about that scene was they erased all the data, which I guess makes sense because they want to get rid of all the AI corruption and everything. But that gives a philosophical debate of, which this is probably more for Metatrex than us, but are you really you if they erase all your memories before you go? I mean, technically, we probably don't remember what we remembered anyway, but we're not computers. We're not part computer. To me, it seemed like that was taking someone's soul. I know that's not what they were going for, but I don't know. For whatever reason, that's the thought that, like, that's like erasing my soul. And then if that's the case, what's the point?
Yeah, I didn't see it necessarily. I know it said erasing the data, but I look at it as because, we get Tilly coming in saying that she was looking at the data. So they downloaded it and then they erased it. So, like, they erased it from her. So I can say, if we want to take that philosophical meta-analysis of this part, was that it was kind of showing the end because she is, part robotic, that was that final, like, Airiam is gone kind of thing. But they downloaded everything because we know they did, because Tilly's like, well, I found this. And,
right.
I found the data and I was looking at the data, from Airiam. So they were erasing it from her. And I kind of looked at that as not like getting rid of her soul, but like her soul is gone. And I will say that was really, like, that scene was really cool. The scans, showing her scans and how she was this augmented human. That was really, really cool. That it wasn't just her brain. Because I was like, okay, well, how much of her is there and how much of it is just, pure mechanics? And so that was really neat to see that the organs were in there. But then it raises the questions of, okay, they saved her life. So obviously, like, her body was completely broken in that shuttle accident. So how damaged was her husband? And, like, they couldn't save him by taking out, like, his organs from his structure. And, like, so, and then it raises this whole question of, like, wait, so they could do it to her, but they couldn't do it to her husband or whoever else was on that shuttle and stuff. And it just, I could go off on that alone, but it was really neat to see that finally, I think.
So it's interesting you bring that up because my wife brought up a different but not unrelated point of why did they fix her to begin with?
Yeah.
If she was so gone that most of her is mechanics, what made her so special? Or do they just do that for everybody that they can?
Yeah.
So the husband may have been, he was decapitated and it was too late. Like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I found that interesting. I'm sure they're never going to get into it as to why, but so I find it interesting that you see them deleting the memory as her finally being gone, because I still maintain that because they downloaded the memory to the ship, she's not actually fully gone yet. And there is a possibility that at least her consciousness can come back Because we did see that with Data, right? I mean, they downloaded Data and put him into B4 to save Data, even though Data's mechanical body gets destroyed in the movie. Now, I know it's not canon, but Data himself exists afterwards because they downloaded Data back into another cybernetic being with the same kind of brain as him, and it's part of the Star Trek Online or whatever. But I get it, it's not canon. But we've seen this used in Star Trek before.
Yeah, and that is interesting, and to kind of get into that debate. I mean, it's really interesting. We'll have to see if Metatrex wants to get into it. I think that'd be a good topic for him, because is she really gone when her memories are part of the computer? You know, they don't necessarily, obviously they have the tech that they could do something similar, but would they, or would they just leave it as is?
Right, and is it, what's the word? Would it be legal?
Yeah.
I mean, or morally correct to even, all right, you died, but we're going to stuff your thoughts into some other body and make, like, it's almost like a Culber 2.0 story going on at that point. Because you're you, but you're not really you, but you are you, but you're not you. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I don't know. That could go off on its own tangent. And like, that is definitely better for Metatrex, and those guys could definitely do better justice to it. But it's just something that came up when I was watching.
No, I agree.
So, the next thing I'd like to talk about is the AI itself. I was a little confused, and maybe you can fix this for me, because it's just me and I can't figure it out. The AI infected Airiam, right? We saw that with the 3 dots. And then from there, that went to Section 31's headquarters and infected Control. That's what it seems that they say in this episode, but that would mean that event took place 2 weeks before the end of last episode.
Yeah, so this is where I get a little fuzzy with it too, because Section 31 is made Control. In my head, after the squid probe comes back, I was looking at it as that because it's such future tech that it was somehow part of Section 31, so Section 31 kind of sent it back. So but then it can't, I don't know. It's really that, I don't know. It's really interesting. So Control obviously is gone. Rogue.
Right, they blew that up.
So I think somehow Control brought the probe back, maybe. And I can't wrap my head around it.
I kind of thought that Control was independently creating its own AI, right?
Yeah.
That's what I had thought. And that's why it wanted the info. But then, something in the future had to realize that it wanted it to send it back. Okay, I can even buy that. I think I got hung up on the 2 weeks thing. Because we see the episode where it happens where she gets hacked. But then in this episode, they actually say that the probe infected Airiam and Control. Okay. But we also know that the people on the base were dead for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So I guess there's 2 weeks between those 2 episodes. And I guess that's like or at least a minimum of 2 weeks between those 2 episodes.
And it could be. I mean, Trek has never been consistent in like, hey, this was last week. We're watching yesterday, tomorrow. Like, that's not, our space is different. True. So like sometimes an episode and then it's like years before the next one, or months or days or weeks. So time is not really a constraint, so to speak. But maybe perhaps that the probe infected Airiam, and then somehow because of what it wanted and how it had to go about doing things, Airiam, through not actions of her own, but when she was being controlled by the probe, what was in her system, she infected Control. Because she could put in the programming, because the programming's in her that's infected her. She could put that in if we kind of look at her as kind of like how Data was and being able to do things. She very well could have put in the coding and the programming for it to infect Control from Discovery. Right?
Right.
Because she's been accessing Control, even though no one knows it. And then putting in that coding to infect so that she can kind of have a back door into Control and be changing things and manipulating Control before everybody higher up, the admirals and stuff, realize, and Section 31 realizes that Control's been compromised. she's had a backdoor into it.
That makes sense. Like I said, the 2 weeks kind of hung me up, but I guess it really doesn't matter. Like you said, they're not consistent with it. So
yeah, it's never been consistent with timing of like how far apart episodes, movies, and that sort of thing are. Sometimes it's days, sometimes it's weeks, months, years.
It makes sense. So I found it interesting that they pointed out that all Section 31 ships ran diagnostics and they're all clean for two reasons. One, we find out later they're not. But two, I get it that Control was infected, so that's why Section 31 ships are doing diagnostics. But if Airiam could access Section 31 Control, and by way, and then infect Section 31, shouldn't all of Starfleet be running this diagnostic to find out if they're clean?
No, I look at it as Section 31. Section 31 basically was linked. Like there's a cord between Section 31 and Control, because Control was created by Section 31. Yes. So they have to be inputting data. So they have that constant connection. Everybody else didn't know about it. Or if they did, it wasn't like, basically they weren't hardwired into Control like Section 31 ships are. So that would be why Section 31 ships would need to make sure that they were okay, because they were hardwired essentially into Control.
Okay. Thanks for fixing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Because that was one of the little things that was like, I don't get why they're only doing these few ships, but that makes sense.
Well, and their ships are way more advanced, right? Section 31 always has the more advanced tech and everything else. So sometimes that advancement gets a little buggy and can be easily, parsed out from lesser tech, because, a virus might be like, well, this one's not worth it because it's wanting to, or it's programmed specifically to go after certain things. So perhaps there was a code in the programming that said only Section 31 ships are going to have a problem rather than everybody else. But again, like I said, I think they were hardwired because they had created Control.
And everyone else was kind of just uploading to it.
Yeah.
And then getting an answer out eventually, but not really. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, that fixes it. So that was easy. Is there anything else about the AI itself?
No, it's really interesting. I can see where this could lead to, and I know other people have said it already, but where we get Zora in the episode Calypso.
Oh, I definitely think this is.
Yeah,
that's why. I definitely think that's why we got Zora.
Yeah, Airiam's memory. So that was kind of nice to see that. I think it's that trope of like AI gone wrong and crazy and everything like that we see in science fiction a lot, which is kind of getting tiring. But at the same time, we're kind of getting there right now in our own society, and it's a little scary. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, well, you can now, Carlsberg can make beer in minutes instead of months or whatever the heck that commercial was about. So it's kind of a resurgence of the 1980s fears of computers. Mm-hmm. The reason why we see it so prevalent is because in the 80s, people did fear the internet and computers, and that's why we got things like Terminator and Tron and all those other weird science fiction-y, the computers take over the world thing. And then they did kind of die out in like the late 90s, early 2000s a bit. They never went away, but they slowed, and then we got a lot of zombies and stuff. But now we're back to huge advancements. We've always had huge advancements in technology since the computer age, but now they're more noticeable to the public, like things like AI and virtual reality and such. So those fears are being played on again, which I guess makes perfect sense from a writer's standpoint.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
it is what it is. So now, during this, while we're finding this stuff out about the AI, actually, this is when we also find out supposedly who the Red Angel is through a bio-neuro scan that was on Airiam. So this is the point where, yes, they downloaded all her files, and now Tilly is combing through them and finds out that the Red Angel is Michael.
Yeah.
First, let me go on record as saying I was not impressed, if that was the answer.
It felt like a letdown, and honest, in my opinion, how I felt about it, it felt like a cop-out and a letdown. It was one of those, okay, kind of things like they did the obvious thing. I mean, yes, we were all speculating over these last several weeks of like who the Red Angel could be. There was serious ones of like, oh, it could be this person or it could be this person. And then, of course, we got into the absurd. I put out on Twitter that I thought the Red Angel was Dr. Frankenfurter. So,
See, now why couldn't they have listened to you?
I know. But it did. It kind of just was like, oh, okay. All right. They went there. That's how I felt about it.
I'm in the same place. Like I said to my wife, and I said, oh, it was just kind of obvious. Like so many people guessed this that I didn't want it to be true. And
you want it to be someone unexpected or like a completely new character, right? We don't want it to be someone who has been the center of season 1 and up till now in season 2. You want it to be like someone in the background, someone you wouldn't expect it to be, because then we would actually learn something more about another character. And I will go on the record and say I enjoy Sonequa Martin Green playing this role, but I have Burnham burnout.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I still really like her, and I really didn't want her to be the Red Angel. I really didn't. Someone had put up a poll, and I had clicked other. And that person, I forget what her name is. Oh, man, I talk to her all the time, too, on Babel. But I'm sorry, I'm totally butchering your name, and we're even friends on Facebook. I'm sorry, I just don't remember it at the moment. But, so, I put other, and then they asked me, well, who's the other? And I went, I don't care as long as I haven't met them yet.
Yeah.
Like, I just wanted to be someone totally new. And this was not, at this point, this was not totally new. This was exactly what we've been looking at for a year and a half, like you said, which was a little weird. They then float the idea that, well, Airiam was compromised or... but then Spock's like, there's no reason for that file to be faked. Because they couldn't possibly know we were going to get it. So that makes no sense. And then they talk about, well, this all makes sense because of the suit itself, right? So Project Daedalus, we find out, is the suit itself. That's the project. And the suit, which uses time crystals, was... it's a little... Okay. So the suit is letting off... what was it, tachyon particles, they said? Or And that's why it couldn't communicate. It was using... The suit, or the Red Angel, was using the signals, not the other way around.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. Like, really kind of crazy. But on the one hand, if a suit cannot... It's way future tech. Like, we don't even know how far in the future this is. It would stand to reason that it wouldn't necessarily communicate in ways that we would think of communicating with something else, right? Or with another being or anything. So I kind of appreciated that they were like, well, it doesn't communicate normally, that Spock couldn't mind meld with it in a normal fashion and couldn't get a read and things like that, because it would make sense that something future would communicate differently, because who knows what types of communication there are available, and you have to use what's available. So I appreciated that. And
I just want to correct one thing, though. It's not actually future tech.
Oh, that's right. Well,
see, we've been led so far to believe. I think I said it like 4 or 5 times myself, and I didn't catch it until you said it. It's actually like 20-year-old tech, right? Because how old would you say Michael is now?
I would say probably in her like mid-20s.
Right. So, and her parents died when she was like 5, 8, 10, something like that.
Yes.
So we're talking.
But okay, so if we want to say this is like past tech that bounces into the future, it's going to pick up other things. Like, you can't...
You would hope.
You know, if it's going forward in time and kind of back in time a little bit and then forward in time, it's going to pick up on things... I don't know. It's wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. It's just weird because we spent the whole season assuming future tech, and it turns out it's not really future tech. It's past tech, which I'm fine with. I don't have a problem with that fact at all. I find.
Or is it past? It originally was past tech, but now it's not. That's how I was kind of looking at it, as like the original concept was past, but because of all this time jumping that the Red Angel has gone through, it has advanced its tech into future tech.
Well, that's possible, and I like that idea.
Because jumping back and forth, I mean, you would imagine that testing, like, something would happen eventually at some point, and you would have to make some changes and adjustments to it in order to keep going backwards and forwards in time, and that you would see something else and go, okay, I need to utilize this kind of thing.
I like that a lot, because that actually fixes a nitpick I had for later, where we keep saying future tech, it's a past tech, but for whatever reason, it's tethered to the future.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes. It's now
I'm glad I could
future
fix
tech.
that for you.
Yeah, that's twice this episode. That's good.
I mean, because, you know, you look at it now. I mean, tech we have now, we don't still use the same kind of computers. As things advance and change, we have to change with it. So I can imagine that, yes, you can take the basis of this, but because, I mean, when we finally see that suit towards the end of the episode, there is no way that's like a 20, 30-year-old piece of tech. Like, it has more of like because like she comes out of it like really kind of weird.
Yeah,
so
it was very
has
Iron Man-ish.
Yeah.
The way it like opened up in the front and she fell forward out of it.
Yeah.
Like,
so I would imagine that it advances and changes and makes calculations and modifications as it goes forward and backwards in time, based off of changes that it's made to the future timeline.
right, and that would make sense why it's now tethered
Mm-hmm.
to the future. Because, like I said, one of the things is if it was old tech, why are we tethered to the future? Also, if we're back changing the future you're tethered to may not exist to be tethered to. But I guess there could be a way of calculating how the future would change and be tethered there. So
Possibly, yeah.
Or it's possible that, like this event, Michael's not supposed to die, therefore that future doesn't actually change because she doesn't die. You know what I'm saying? So, she's kind of just doing the quantum leap thing, going back and making things the way they're supposed to be, and not the way they were changed to.
Yeah, perhaps, yeah.
That makes sense. And it turns out that Michael's parents were Project Daedalus, and they were the ones who created this whole project to begin with. So this was the first time you had a clue that Michael's parents are involved in this?
Which is throws a really interesting wrench in it.
Yes, it does. I like that they mentioned it here. I just don't think they did enough. I feel my only nitpick is they did too much of convincing you it was Michael and there was no possible way for it to be something other than Michael. So that just to make sure that you didn't pick it up by the end. Does that make sense?
I appreciated that, though, because that ending, I was like, what the?
No, and I don't think they needed to harp on it being Michael so much to get you there.
Well, see, and I didn't feel like they did. I think, the writers, again, and I think that they've done this throughout all of season 1 and definitely in season 2, they've been portraying Michael as Spock said, she's got to fix everything, and it's only her that can fix everything. And so that was kind of continuing that on in that, well, it's me, I have to fix this. It's me, it's involving me. And I can kind of understand that. I mean, if you found out that you were someone from the future coming back to change things in the past, and then people were like, well, we're going to capture future you'd be like, excuse me, hello? No. I'm right here. Wait.
Her reactions, I didn't mind. Mm-hmm. I felt they felt right. It was the one that went too far for me. Well, there's really two. But the one that really went too far for me was when, was it Culber was explaining that that there's no way this is wrong because the variations prove that it's her, otherwise it would be too perfect.
That was Spock.
Was Spock that said that?
Spock was explaining that the variations in where when the Red Angel would show up was because Burnham was there. So like,
no, not that scene. I like that scene. They were talking about the brain, the bio neural patterns, and someone had mentioned there was a slight variation. Oh no! How do you know they're not fake? The patterns themselves, and I believe it was Culber, although that doesn't sound right now that I say it out loud. Said that if they were too perfect, if they were faked, they would be too perfect. So that was the one that was a little... Because he said it's definitely not a fake. Like, or it's definitely not wrong that it's her. And that's the one that kind of went too far for me.
Gotcha. Now I remember where we're at.
Definitely is kind of what... They at some point they should have been like, well, it's 98% sure, you know, and then like they leave that little wiggle room in the writing. They left no wiggle room in the writing for me. I don't know. It's my hang up. Most people don't care.
I get what you're saying, but I think what they're trying to explain, and this is where I can throw some science in, is that, you know, we're taught, most people who just take one science class from like middle school, high school, and you're learning about DNA, and that you get, you know, this much from your mom and this much from your dad, and that's it. When really, it's like you could have any combination of 3 people on your dad's side and 3 people on your mom's side. So you could have like half of your DNA from your mom, but then the other half of your DNA comes from like your dad's dad or your dad's mom. It's not like mom or dad. And so I think that they were trying to get that across, that it is her, not just to keep the surprise that, hey, spoiler alert, it's actually Michael's mom.
Right.
Because then that would leave that open. You'd be like, okay, it's someone who's related to her. And then you'd be like, well, okay, but her parents are dead, so who else could it be? So I think they were trying to avoid that because they wanted you to have, because honest to God, I was surprised. I was not expecting it to be her mom.
No, I don't think you could have. I think it'd be ludicrous at that point of the episode to still believe, because there were some people who did think it was her mom, but Amanda, by the way, not her biological mother. But, and there may have been 1 or 2 people that threw out her actual parents, but there was nothing before this that would have given you that idea.
No.
And
so I think that's what they were trying to avoid.
Right, and I think they just went too hard at trying to avoid it. That's my only thing. I think because you should be able to watch back, in my opinion, you should be able to watch back an episode and say, oh, there's the hint. Oh, there's the hint. Oh, there's the hint. There were no hints. You know what I'm saying? I think that's just me. And again, most people I know don't particularly care either way, whether they do that or not. It's just one of my hang-ups. On Warp 5, I was talking about it with one of the episodes in Season 4, where the Romulans say, we have to get out of here, just so that we don't know later that they're not on the ship. Like, so they purposely said, we have to get out of here. And that, to me, that's just... It's a shortcut. It's a shortcut to make you believe that they're on a ship, so that when they surprise you with, it's a drone, you're surprised. And if they didn't say that, I probably still would have been surprised. That's my only thing here. So I think that definitely was just a step too far for me, personally. But again, like I said, that's me. Because the surprise at the end was still great. Finding out it's her biological mother was awesome. Before getting to that, I did love the fact that she literally punched Leland in the face twice, once for each parent.
Yep.
That was a great scene. And the fact that Georgiou got that story out without being the one to tell it was also great.
Well, and see, that still makes me question that. I mean, she claimed a couple episodes ago that she knew what Leland had done. But I'm wondering if she suspected but didn't know, and so it was a way of her finding out herself. Because, like, she may have suspected what he did, but didn't know, like, to the extent.
It's possible. And
because, I mean, it's Georgiou.
She does say straight to his face, you are responsible.
Mm-hmm.
So she had to know something.
Yeah.
You know, so maybe it was a heavy suspicion, maybe you're right. Or maybe she just felt it wasn't my story to tell. Because we see that this Georgiou is not really a mirror Georgiou when it comes to Michael.
Yeah.
There's more there. Because she still sees her as her Michael. You know what I'm saying? So she doesn't really act like... She doesn't treat Michael the same way she treats everyone else, is kind of my point. You know, so... It's
creepy.
Yes.
In my opinion.
A little bit, yes. Why is it creepy for you?
I don't know. There's just... It goes beyond kind of like a relationship of something. I mean, it's sheer manipulation, and maybe that's what creeps me out about it, is that she's able to manipulate everybody, but she's really, like, kind of over the top with it with Burnham, and that's what creeps me out. It's almost like she's kind of like Mirror Kira from Deep Space Nine a little bit with way she interacts with Burnham. She's like really sweet and like, I love you and I care about you and all this stuff, and you're just like, okay, you're putting it on a little thick.
Yeah.
Why? Like, why are you putting it on a little thick? And that's what like kind of creeps me out about it.
I agree. I just don't know if they're going that direction with the writing.
Yeah. I don't know
at
either.
the end, this is all going to turn out like she was like, well, because Mira Michael was her daughter, she just saw you as her daughter and overcompensated. Like, it was obvious what Mira Lorca was doing, and that was really creepy.
Yeah.
It's just not as obvious to me that that's the same thing Georgiou's doing here.
I don't know. I think she's doing like little things, saying you need to trust me and things like that, because I think she saw an opportunity that she wants to be in charge of Section 31, and oh boy, that should not happen because then crap's gonna hit the fan. But I'm wondering if all these things are Burnham, or is Georgiou trying to get Burnham to like join up with her, because I think her ultimate motive was to be in charge of Section 31 for Georgiou, to be in charge of Section 31, and then trying to like say, oh, Burnham, you need to trust me, and all this kind of stuff to get her to come over to that side with her.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that is exactly where we're headed. I know you had said too, like, oh, I that would be terrible, but I think it's exactly what's going to happen, and that's why Section 31 ends up being no more in Starfleet. But
well, I think Georgiou being in charge of Section 31. I mean, can you imagine Mirror Georgiou being in charge of Section 31? The crap she could do, the damage that she could do. Like, geez,
it's exactly it's something like that led her to be the Empress in the Mirror Universe. So,
exactly.
She's just trying to recreate how she came to power there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's exactly how it is. So now, all right, more specifically about Section 31's involvement in this, we see that they basically authorized the creation of the Red Angel and then kind of lost it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But again, this goes to that Section 31 always has future tech, and their tech is always more advanced than the rest of Starfleet's, although I don't quite know how. Makes you wonder if they're holding Starfleet back from having the same kind of tech, like they don't want, or they just don't want to share, or like somehow they got it from future, because I'm sorry, but we're still in the same century. There's no way that they could have some of the tech that they have. Anyway, but
it is a little ridiculous.
It is. Like, the premise is just a little bit ridiculous, but it was really interesting how they're like, we did this because the Klingons had something similar. And it was interesting that they, showed Ash and he didn't even react to it. Like, did he know that Klingons in the past had been working towards this and just never said anything? Or was he just as surprised to find out that they were going to do that? He didn't really have much of a reaction either way. I think he might have known, but it's really interesting to stop Klingons from having it. They created it and then sort of lost it, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, it was a little confusing how that all ended up coming out, but I guess the main gist is that they really lost it because Michael's mother stole it.
Mm-hmm.
She stole it, but doesn't go back and stop the Klingons from killing her husband and losing her child to Vulcans. That confuses me.
But if we take a look at this, okay, if the Red Angel is going forward in time, she knew that those events had to happen in order to create the timeline where we're in right now. Otherwise, those events would have stopped. Burnham wouldn't have gone to Vulcan. She wouldn't have met Spock. She wouldn't have learned logic and so like that progression for Burnham, considering it's her mom, wants to have something in the future, some future event, something with Burnham in the future. I think made it so she knew she could not go back and stop that because Burnham had to get to that point.
I guess.
In her own timeline, like
that's
down the road.
A ton of control from a mother.
Well, it's a mother.
I mean, Like, I could honestly tell you that I wouldn't care what happens to the rest of the universe. I'd go back and make sure my child was okay.
Well, and I mean, she did, right? She shows up.
True. I guess she knows the child's okay. I guess it's really whether I would save my wife or not.
But imagine the loss that she must have felt, knowing that she couldn't do that. Obviously, she went forward to a time where something was up with Burnham and knew that she could not, if she saved her dad, then those future events wouldn't happen. And Burnham wouldn't be whatever it is that she is at that time that her mom goes forward to, wouldn't exist. And it has to exist. So I can't imagine knowing that you have this suit and I could go back and I could save this person and not. Like, that's incredible to say I cannot go back and save my husband from dying.
Oh, it's a ton of restraint. I mean,
yeah.
Like I said, it would just be incredible restraint and control because, like we see in other shows, like The Flash goes back all the time and screws up history and it does terrible things to the timeline. And she doesn't do that. All she does is continue to make sure Burnham doesn't die.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a bit weird in and of itself because that could have changed the timeline. Like, maybe we're not supposed to be in this timeline right now.
Yeah, it is interesting to think about that because obviously, you know, she's wanting to save her child, but why? Like, what does future Burnham do that is so important that past Burnham cannot die? Aside from the fact, like, her mom could just come back and say, I'm sorry, this thing happened, I'm here, and be with her for, like, ever. But she keeps going forward and going back to the future and not staying. Like,
Right. It's really weird. It's odd that keeps happening. Because, like, it's like she changes an event and then she goes and checks what ends up happening.
Yeah.
That was okay. And then, so, there's a possibility where she's been coming back and changing all kinds of events, realizing that didn't work out, and then going back and changing them back to the way they were.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it also makes sense why she would talk to Spock, or she saw Michael, or she's been trying to communicate with Michael, and those things now that we know it's the mother. It also doesn't help. Me and Amy talked about this last week. It really doesn't help Burnham with the shouldering all the responsibility issues she has.
Yeah, and that honestly is really interesting from her perspective. Children who feel that they have to be the adult will do that. So you can have young kids who have parents who are not around, and they might have younger siblings, and they very much take on the responsibility of the adults. And they sit there and say, I have to make sure this gets done and this gets done. And then somehow parents change, like the parents realize what's going on or something. And it's really hard for that child to stop acting like the adult in the home because they've been doing it for so long. So taking on all that responsibility, I see it in my line of work as a social worker. So it's really interesting that she does. I'm kind of like, okay, I get it that she feels like she has to fix things, but like, really, other people can help you. You know, you don't have to do it. It's, but I think that's part of the writing is that because she is kind of the center of the show, of course she's going to be the one to take the responsibility and fix things and figure things out.
It makes sense from a writing perspective, because otherwise it'd be a really boring show if everyone was just kind of like, whatever. But, no, and I agree with you because, my dad passed away when I was only 14. I had a 9-year-old sister, and I wasn't nearly to the degree that Burnham is, but I also didn't lose both parents in a horrible accident or attack. So I do understand now you're the man of the house, or the woman of the house, or whatever the case may be. And society doesn't even help with that, because there were people that would say that to a 14-year-old, thinking they were helping.
Yeah.
They thought they were doing a good thing. Oh, all the responsibility's on you. Like, I can't even get a job, bro. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
What can I possibly do? And, it's your responsibility to take care of your mother. Now, my mother never made me feel that way. Don't get it mistaken. But there were other people who would say those things. And you're like, I'm a freaking 14. I barely know how to take care of myself at the moment. How am I supposed to do this? And you do end up, like, I wouldn't bring home test grades that were good. Like, my mom, for, like, years thought I was dumb as a rock. Because she'd see, like, 3 tests all year, and they were all failures. Because those are the only ones that I would show. Because you're supposed to get good grades. And but I had to get punished for bad grades. Stuff like that. Little things like that were things that happened somewhat because of just how I was raised and somewhat because my dad passed away early and because I was supposed to set an example for my sister who was 5 years younger and whatever. But, so, yeah, I understand where Michael's coming from. She takes it to an extreme, but, that's the point of TV, right? Everything goes to kind of an extreme. And if it wasn't an extreme, it'd just kind of be my life and then it would be boring because nobody wants to see my life played out. So, I did find it interesting that we had the Spock bring up, before we knew it was Michael's mother, that Spock brings up the grandfather paradox. She has to go back to save herself so that she can exist to go back and save herself.
Yeah.
Which I found very interesting because a lot of this stuff confuses people a lot. It confuses me most of the time. And I tend to believe I'm somewhat intelligent. So just laying it out that way made it very easy to understand why it has to happen. Why this plan has to work. Because leading up to that plan, all you kept hearing was, Michael was... so if Michael is the one that's coming back, knowing that she's supposed to fake dying would mean that the angel wouldn't come back, in my opinion. Because I know it's a plan. Everyone keeps telling her, well, there's a team of people that are going to make sure you stay alive. And then finally and I didn't catch it the first or second time I watched it. The third time I watched it, I finally caught it, where Spock actually says, we have to kill Burnham. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't catch that. I did catch the conversation he had with her as he was strapping her to the chair. And she's like, well, what happens if this doesn't work? And he goes, well, that wouldn't be advantageous because I'd go to prison as a murderer again. Thanks, Spock. But I did catch at the time before that he was the only person who said she actually has to die because at no point did anyone say, well, what if future Burnham knows that we're going to kill this Burnham so she doesn't come back because she knows we're going to save her just before we kill her? That's what was running through my head the whole time they were setting up this plan. If she knows it's fake, then she knows not to come back. But then they fixed it because Spock stood there with a gun and said, no one's going out there. She's going to die.
Yeah. Then that was really incredibly powerful, especially after we have the scene of them together and he accepts her apology. And you can see that weight kind of lift off her when he says, if it helps, I accept your apology. And so, you're like, wait, but it makes sense that she has to die. It is one of those situations where that's the only option. There is no other option. She has to die, not pretend die, actually die.
Yeah, it doesn't work if you get really close but don't do it.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
then she knows later that it didn't happen. So. Whatever. But I thought it was really good because they did take it the whole way. They didn't shortcut that scene. They killed her. I mean, it was only for a minute, but they killed her. And Spock had to stand in front. So that's another scene. Georgiou is flipping out.
Oh, I know.
About
that
one person's life. I'm so confused, Georgiou. You're confusing me.
Well, and again, I think this goes back to that. There is that connection. And even though Burnham does not like Georgiou because she knows who she is, that she's not the real Georgiou, that it's Mirror Georgiou says, we have this strong connection. Whether you're my Michael or not, we have a connection.
It's so weird.
And it was really interesting to see her being freaking out and we have to get her out there and Spock's like, no. And you're just wow, I didn't expect that reaction out of Georgiou. It was really interesting to see.
Yeah, me neither. And I thought that played more to the she actually cares, not just manipulating side. But she's just confusing. She's confusing me. So, but I liked it. I did like it. I did enjoy it. The scene was great. And she does die, and that's when we get Michael's mother. And
that was incredible. The
fact that it wasn't Michael was great.
Yeah, the fact that it was her mother was amazing, but the effects of the Red Angel coming in, that time wormhole, and it's red and it has that wave and it kind of rattles everybody as it comes out. And I mean, from a visual standpoint, it was really well done. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it was great. And when they catch her and pull her down, all of that was done super well. And so I don't know necessarily if, because she's exhausted, she falls out of the suit at the end. Was it her fighting, or is it just doing this jumping makes her that exhausted. I mean, I guess we'll find out next episode, but
I think it was because, she herself, the Red Angel, shoots that beam into Burnham to bring her back to life.
yes.
I think it was that energy expenditure that exhausted her. And it could be because maybe we don't know that she goes onto planets or anything like that, experiences gravity when she's in the future. It could just be the sheer fact that she's experiencing gravity. I mean, they pull her down to the surface because she's floating above, right?
Yeah.
So we never see the Red Angel. I mean, well, I guess we do see the Red Angel walking on the asteroid.
Yeah, but a gravitational field of an asteroid's not even close to a planet.
Yeah, and exactly. So I think it could just be the sheer fact that it's gravity and she hasn't experienced any type of Earth-type gravity for such a long time that it's going to affect her.
Yeah, that makes sense. So before we finish, though, I'd like to talk about the few character moments that we did have throughout the episode. We've alluded to them through a lot of this, but like, for instance, the first time Michael and Tyler talk on the lift, when she says, well, it's still, they're talking about Section 31 itself and how she already knows about her parents being killed as a direct result of what they were doing for Section 31. And I thought that was interesting because Tyler even says, like, you can't possibly hold me responsible. You can't think I knew. And she's like, I didn't think you knew. But you still believe in their values.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very powerful message because we have stuff like that going on in our world today where people are like, they'll say something and, oh, I agree with that person. And then they'll take it. People will take that and go, well, yeah, but if you are okay with that, then you must be okay with more than just that. Or at the very least, you're not so put off by X, Y, and Z that you still support person A. And I don't know if this is necessarily one of those cases.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, because, yeah, he's part of Section 31, and he doesn't necessarily agree. He doesn't agree with this, but I don't know. Some of it seems like an overreaction, too, because if you're working for Section 31, you're kind of somewhat culpable as well, right?
Oh, I agree, but I don't think that, her reaction to that was really, really kind of rubbed me wrong because that happened years ago. So, of course, he didn't know and had no knowledge of it. And yes, they've done awful things now and they will in the future because it's Section 31. But I don't know. That reaction was just really weird to me. I get her being mad at him because he's working with Section 31 and she knows him or she thinks she knows him personally and whatnot. So that's where it was coming from. It was a very personal reaction to, like, how can you work for people who would do something like this?
Yeah, right. Okay, so I get that. But, okay, when it comes to an organization that does top secret stuff, it's not like that's a new phenomenon to you. You knew that about Section 31. Scientists doing things and possibly being exposed is unfortunately a side effect. I mean, it's always a possibility that that's what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. I mean, it sucks it was your family, but
it would have been somebody else's.
Yeah, right. I mean, you didn't think that was a possibility for some other scientist's family?
Yeah.
And I get it, Leland got sloppy, but again, that's just kind of, and I get it, punching him, he's directly responsible. So I get being really pissed off at him in the moment. But to, like, hold that particular thing against Section 31 when you didn't before, and to hold it against Tyler is a little odd.
Yeah. I can see that.
But I do think, like I said, it does talk to a bigger issue that we have where you'll talk, and I don't want to talk politics in general, but people will say, oh, well, I agree with this, and this from politician A, but I really hate that, and that. Now, is the hate for the second part enough to not support them on the first part? Mm. And that's kind of the argument I feel she's making here.
Mm-hmm.
That because, okay, yeah, Section 31 does do good, but at what cost? And if you're okay with those costs, then I'm not okay with you.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, which is really interesting because, I mean, they share, and I know you've got it on here, but she kisses him. That kind of came out of left field for me a little bit. And it's like, okay, I get that, we have that one scene with them in the turbo lift, and he tries to, kind of be sweet with her and stuff, and she kind of brushes it off. She's still harboring feelings for him. You know, I think he probably was the first person that she's had a romantic relationship with. You know, raised on Vulcan, ascribed to Vulcan ways, kind of stuff like that. I bet you anything she's probably the first relationship that she's had is with Tyler, and then that ultimate betrayal and all that other backstory and stuff. So yeah, that kind of came out of left field for me after I'm like, okay, you're pissed off at him that he's working for Section 31, and right before this mission, and I get it, you're highly emotional, but you kiss him. And that she goes to his quarters to talk to him before it. It's really interesting.
I kind of wrote it off as she believed at that moment that there's a good possibility that she dies and doesn't come back. So she's putting the other stuff aside. Yeah. I can see that. Yeah, so that's how, in my head, I rationalized all that. Because it is weird. Like, you were yelling at him like an hour ago. Like, literally an hour ago you did that. So,
yeah.
This is a bit weird. But I guess you're now faced with the fact that you're putting your life on the line to trap yourself as well. Mm-hmm. So, it's kind of weird. Georgiou, Stamets, and Culber, I thought... So I've seen a lot of different takes on this, and
we need more Georgiou telling Tilly to be quiet.
Yeah. We really, really do.
I loved it. It was so great.
So that was good, but also when she comes on to Stamets and Culber's like, you know he's gay, right? And she's like, well, in my universe, he's pansexual. All right, two things. One, great line. Two, isn't she supposed to be lying about being from the mirror universe? Like, no one was supposed to know that.
No, they know that she's from, because remember, they were in the mirror universe.
Oh, right, because they're the ones who took her out. It's everyone else who's been lied to, I guess.
Like, Pike doesn't know, and Spock doesn't know. Cornwell knows, but yeah, the group that was in there, they knew. Does.
Thank you. That fixes that, because, yeah, all right, fine, I was wrong. Cool.
Yeah, I liked Culber's face when she was coming on to him. He's like, what are you doing with my man?
Yeah, well, that's it. That's what I'm trying to get to. So... Culber got jealous, right?
Yeah.
Of that in general, right? He's like, he's gay, right? She goes into the whole, well, he's pansexual, and we have DEFCON level
5
fun. What?
DEFCON level 5 together.
Yeah. So okay. So that all happens, and Stamets is like, in this universe and every other one I can imagine, I'm gay, and so is he. And Georgiou's line after that is the one that's important, where she goes, well, now that we can all, now that we all said what we can see right in front of us, and just kind of leaves. Mm-hmm. Because she's actually, like, getting them back together.
Sort of.
Like, she's like trying to explain to them, so you do still have feelings.
Yeah.
You want to, I know you can't understand it, Culber, because what Culber is suffering with, and we have this when he sits with Cornwell, it's not really that he doesn't know, like, we've been led to kind of believe that he doesn't know the feelings he had for Stamets. Like, he knows that he had them, but not really. None of that's the problem. The problem is Culber doesn't understand Culber.
Yeah.
Not that Culber doesn't understand Stamets.
Which is so, it's incredibly heartbreaking, but I love that they're following up on it. We had a little bit in last episode. We have it again in this episode where he talks to Cornwell. And from a perspective of, I've always kind of been bothered by major things in Star Trek that somehow everyone's fine with in the next episode. And that goes to episodic television. They can't necessarily include it in the next one kind of thing. But where we have this greater story arc over the entire thing, that they can include his journey but I loved it. And it was so just beautiful and moving. And I'm really excited to see where he goes from here. Because he left Cornwell when she tells him, to walk, I can't remember the line and I'll butcher it. So basically just create a new path.
Yeah.
With what you're walking on right now. And he smiles and he has that, like, you're right, And I'm really excited to see where that takes him. But again, it's still so sad and heartbreaking. Like when they're on the away mission and he says, I'm sorry for your loss, even though it was his loss too, he doesn't have that connection to Airiam. And Culber says, now's not the time. And I don't think there ever will be. I just internally, I was just like, my heart kind of broke a little again. I'm like, oh, dang. Like a little chip just kind of came out. And I'm like, oh, like they're never going to sit down and have that resolution that they need to have, whether they're still together or not afterwards. I don't know if we're ever going to get that because Stamets is like, it's never going to be the time. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we're going to get it. I think
I hope so.
I think we're working to it, and I hope we're working to it because to reference the conversation with Cornwell, she says, I can't remember her words exactly either.
That love you have to every day.
Well, no, but it's choice.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something you just either have or don't have. It's a choice. It's actually a choice. And but before that, she talks about him in the past tense.
Yeah.
He catches it, and he's like, she's like, well, you're not the same you. And that's the point. Like, that's what he's struggling with, not understanding that he's not the same person while simultaneously kind of being the same person.
Mm-hmm. It's almost a little bit of MPD, multiple personality disorder, a little bit. So we can say he's got him that he knows from season 1, but then he's also got him now in season 2. And it'll be interesting to see how he connects the two of them together. Makes a new person, essentially.
Exactly. And then she says, like you said at the end, she says, the only way to create a new path is to walk it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great line because he's kind of holding himself back, which means you're going to go nowhere. You have to just go. And you could see something went off in his head when he heard that.
Mm-hmm. I will say
we're going to get something.
That scene did give me one of my favorite lines. I love when Giorgio says to Stamets, "You're awful neurotic. Have you considered a medication?"
Yeah, that was.
Looks at her like, "You crazy? No." I loved it.
She says, "You're much smarter than my Stamets, but you're much more neurotic.
Yeah,
Never considered medication." It was great. Yeah, I did like that. I love that whole scene. That was great.
It really was.
There was some seriousness and there was some comic relief that really worked really well in that scene. And I feel that they sprinkled enough comic relief in this episode that it was good and it wasn't overbearing, but it broke up the heavy points we were hitting throughout the episode.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. One thing that really was powerful to me, and it wasn't anything major, but when Nilsson comes on to take over Airiam's station, that was, you could see it. Everybody's like, we're still kind of not ready to say goodbye, but now we have to because somebody else is in that spot. Yeah,
which is just kind of how it works at work.
Yeah.
I work in an industry where people unfortunately do at times have injuries where they can never come back or they do die, or I've never been on a job site that had it, but I mean, if I were to tell you the stories there, forget not being ready. I mean, guys have died and people just raid their tool bags.
Yeah.
Because he had better pliers than I do, so I'm taking that, and this is mine and that. And then his name comes off the locker and next man up gets the spot. So, yeah, it's kind of weird. It is also weird that they changed the actress to bring back the original actress in the same position just as a different person.
A little bit, but we had her in some background episodes earlier on in the season, so...
No, I know we've had her. I know we've seen her. It's just like, I don't know. I would love to hear the story of why they changed who Airiam was if she was just going to...
I know it's been out there, but I couldn't tell you because I don't remember, so...
Yeah. There was theories of makeup problems or whatever, but... Whatever. Clearly, they had no problem with the actress, right? And she had no problem with being on the show because she's back. So it's just weird.
So one other scene I wanted to bring up. I know you've got Michael and Non on here, and that one, I think that needed to happen.
Yes. And I don't think enough people have talked about it. So, because I've been looking on Facebook, I don't see much about it, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. I think it's great. You know, Non, clearly, she must be older and have the grace to say, I'm sorry that you lost your friend, and I'm sorry the one that did it. But then for Burnham to recognize that, no, you had to because I couldn't. You did the right thing because I couldn't do the right thing because I was too overcome with my emotions. And I thought that was quite powerful. I wanted to say I love the scene where they're talking about the plan with Cornwell and Pike and Spock and Burnham. I love that. Pike again delivered another line that I just absolutely love. What you're asking me to allow is in direct contradiction with the oath I took as a Starfleet captain. And he didn't have a lot in this episode, but what he had, I really enjoyed.
I can't think of any parts he's ever been in that I didn't enjoy. Like, they've written him beautifully and he's acted it perfectly.
Yes.
And yeah, this is just another scene where we get another. He's such a multifaceted character because at times he's kind of goofy, and he's not like the stuffy Starfleet captain you kind of expect him to be. And then at other times he says things like this, or in the last episode where he had the line, that's a distinction without difference. Like, so he knows when to be which type of captain, which is amazing.
I think he's written a little bit, kind of the combinations. I think we can see Kirk, Picard, and probably a little bit of Cisco, I think, in him. And I think that's kind of, because we get those moments and you can kind of see little bits of all of them, but he's just written really well and yeah, just amazing character.
Yeah, and he's a perfect culmination of those three characters and the way they are without any of them feeling overpowering or misplaced. Because it would be easy to write where the Kirk side of him or the Cisco side of him seem out of place, completely out of place.
Yeah.
Where I can see the Picard being easier to kind of write. I mean, they did it again with Janeway a little bit, right? And then, so that's kind of the middle road between those two other captains, really. And, but they've done this in such a way that it doesn't feel misplaced or wrong. And no matter what he says, it seems like something he would say.
Yeah.
So what are your final thoughts on this episode?
It really was. I enjoyed it. It was quite a ride. I think we finally got a lot of answers to a lot of things and some resolutions to things. There was a lot of resolution in this episode. We see it with Burnham and Spock. I think they're finally mending their relationship. We get who the Red Angel is. I mean, we know who it is now. And that's great because, hey, now we can answer, like, where are these other 4 signals supposed to be and what are we supposed to do and who knows where it's going to take us. And so that's exciting. And, I think Culber's kind of resigned to, okay, I have to figure out who I am now and who knows where that's going to take me, but I'm okay with it. And so there was a lot of resolution in this episode, but I really enjoyed it. One thing we didn't talk about, and I'll briefly mention it, I want to know what happened to Leland because holy crap. I figured Giorgio was going to take him out, and he kind of took himself out, I think. But that's where I'll leave it.
Okay, so I'll answer that in my final thoughts as well, but I'll get to that at the end. So, yes, I agree. I love the way the story's going. I do like the answer for who the Red Angel is, despite the fact that I had a little issue of how we got there. And I didn't think we were going to get the Red Angel till later, actually. I didn't think this was going to finish itself up until the end of the series. But now, like you said, we do get to find out some information about the other red dots. Even if we don't get all the information up front, like, we might just find out she tells them and then we go and fix them in next season or something. But we will get information as to why she was doing what she was doing and why she was fixing the things she was fixing that didn't necessarily have to do with Burnham. So she wasn't just fixing Burnham things. She was just always guaranteed to show up when Burnham was involved. And even then, she did show up when Saru was involved and Burnham wasn't. So, unless there was a belief that maybe that the Discovery would be destroyed if they didn't fix it. But whatever. It also leads some respectability to the fact that Force evolving that entire race doesn't destroy that entire race, because you would assume that she would have foreseen that outcome and not come back and done it, because she definitely helped with doing it. So we'll see. But now I do think Amy's a little bit more correct in that we will not go back to these planets that we saw earlier and see what the outcomes of our messing with them are, which I kind of don't like because I wanted to see that, but whatever. 6 and 1/2 dozen on that. As far as Leland, I think we see that the AI is still on his ship, right? The computer thought for itself and decided to destroy his eyeball and possibly kill him. I don't know if we know for a fact he's dead, especially the way this show treats death. I definitely don't think we know for a fact if he's dead or not. Some people have said he was, but he just lost his eyeball. And was it both or was it just one?
It was both. Okay. But that was the thing. Like, he purposely went up to that thing knowing what it was going to do. So I don't think that he didn't know. He knew.
Yeah, because he was saying something about an override, right?
Yeah, he was trying to override because they didn't have enough power to do the thing that it was going to do. But then you hear his voice saying to Tyler that there's enough power, but he's laying on the floor supposedly dead.
Well, that's why I think the computer took over at that point. I don't know if he knew he was getting stabbed in the face.
I think he did.
Like, we'll find out, but I don't know. I don't think that was the case, because I think
that somehow injected his consciousness into the ship's computer. Because it went through his eyes.
Yeah, I know.
It accesses your prefrontal cortex. And then somehow there's enough power on the ship to close the time wormhole.
Yeah, I mean, I hope the writers are as smart as you are.
By injecting his body's energy into the ship to give him enough energy. That's what that's my crazy thought.
Yeah, I know. No, it doesn't
now
sound
I got your brain spinning.
It's not that far-fetched considering what this show has given us so far. I just didn't know if he knew he was going to end up dead or permanently disfigured or whatever, because it seemed to me like the computer started talking in his voice to him. He sort of had a reaction, got shot in the eye, and then the computer was talking for him as him. I'm so confused. I think it was the computer. I don't know. Now I don't know at all. I knew better before you gave me a plausible excuse. Now I'm just completely confused.
I think the computer mimicking back what he said was to mimic his voice. So that it got his voice and would use his voice.
Yeah, no.
But I think he knew he was going to get injected in the eyeballs. Because that thing he was looking right at it. And it said it couldn't do it. And then he's like, override, come on. I need this to do whatever it does. He knew.
Yeah.
He knew.
We'll probably get an answer for it next week. But
I know.
Hopefully. Because now I'm just confused. But anyway. So, it's been fun talking about the Red Angel this week. But that's not the only thing we've been discussing here on the network. So here's a quick look at some of the other things you may have missed elsewhere on Trek FM.
Previously on Trek.fm, Literary Treks.
Like you said, some of the recent novels have gone with Commander Una, which is, if I'm remembering correctly, they explain a name she's kind of adopted because she got tired of people just calling her number one or something like that. But it's still referring to this backstory of her being the best of the best, being perfect from Illyria, which is a planet that embraces genetic manipulation, I think, and that sort of thing, and breeding for the absolute best. And she was number one in her generation or something like that.
Melodic Treks.
But after I watched Star Trek Voyager, and I was aware of the existence of the Mini-Moog Voyager. It didn't take me long to just it would be cool one day, if I could acquire the synth, the first thing I'd do with it is redo the Star Trek Voyager theme with it. Wouldn't that be fun? The Star Trek Voyager theme performed by the Mini-Moog Voyager, right?
Warp 5.
So I'm going to go to Sleeping Dogs for my next episode here. Now, at this point in Star Trek, I'm really tired of the Klingons, and I was on my original watch of Enterprise, and I still am. I'm really, really tired of the Klingons, so... Did I say the right episode? Sleeping Dogs, I said, right?
Yes.
You're just looking at me funny here. I'm like, did I say Shadows of Pajama?
No, you said Sleeping Dogs.
Okay, good. So...
The Edge, a Star Trek Discovery podcast.
She is with a fake Hammond, but she even says, well, it's you, but it's really only my memory of you.
Right.
That line is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I'm not the sappiest person on the planet by any stretch of the imagination. Anyone who has heard me talk for months on this network knows that. But this is heartbreaking stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
Check out all of these shows and join the conversation about your favorite corner of the Star Trek universe and beyond. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you're an Apple user, be sure to hit the subscribe button in Apple Podcasts on iPhone, iPad, or Apple TV, or the desktop iTunes app to get the latest episodes as soon as they are published. And please leave us a star rating and written review.
If you're not an Apple user, we've got you covered as well. You can find our shows on Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, Windows Phone, in most third-party apps, and you can stream and download the MP3 file from our website or grab the RSS link. And listeners, remember, There's only a few weeks left of the show, so get those reviews up in time so you can be entered into the drawing for the Captain Pike fan sets pins.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show, and there are many ways for you to do that. The best place to join in the larger conversation is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Type Babel, B-A-B-E-L, into the search field on Facebook and it should come right up. If you'd like to send us an email, you can use the form on our website at trekfm.com/contact. Choose the send to a show and select the Edge. That will come right to us. You can also find the network on Twitter at TrekFM and on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. So Patrick, where can people find you when you're not on the edge of the universe?
So when I'm not on the edge of the universe, they can find me hanging out in the Babel Conference, because I jump around time too. I jump from here to Warp 5, which is Enterprise era, and then sometimes I actually watch other stuff. But usually I'll pop in on the Babel Conference where I can talk to all of those universes at once. They can also find me at Twitter at MagicDrop5. It's just no spaces, and the 5 is a number. And they can find me, as I just mentioned, on Warp 5 with my buddy Brandon, which will be coming every other week now. So, Hayley, where can people find you when you're not confusing me like crazy with all these great theories that I hope writers pick up?
You can find me. I'm also over on Trek FM, where I co-host Standard Orbit with Ken and Zach. You can find me in the Babel Conference on Facebook. And crazily enough, I do this other crazy podcast. It's called Discoville over on the Fandom Podcast Network, where we talk about both the Orville and Discovery because you can love both. And you can find me on Twitter. I am at Trekkie01D.
If you'd like to help us keep all our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/TrekFM. That's patreon.com/TrekFM to get all the details. Perks include early access to episodes, exclusive content, producer credits, and more. Available through our special patrons website, Patron Zone. It requires a great deal of money to produce, host, and distribute these shows each month. We really appreciate any support you can give us and hope you'll join the team. Again, you'll find all the details at patreon.com/TrekFM.
We'd like to thank our associate producers, Norman C. Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Pillow, Lisa Slack, Shoaib Mirza, Richard Rutledge, James Muldrow, Cornelia Rutner, Ryan Millay, Chris Trabuzio, Brian Milosh. Thank you for supporting Trek FM and The Edge.
Thank you for listening, and join us next time to see what's happening on the edge of Federation space.